All right, folks, it looks like we're live here. So how many people we got now?
Couple people. Good evening, Jason. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's I've been outside a lot playing, but I haven't really done much else. Just kind of hanging out.
Well, let's introduce our guest today. So we've got Sean. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's known as Shamrock Sean.
Hey guys, thanks for having me here tonight.
All right, we're still. It'll take a little while for things to start trickling in.
Yeah, I'm just going to refresh my screen. Just checking with my wife to see if we got any echo.
Pascal, thank you for that comment. Videos are going to get better, I promise.
Oh yeah, he's from Canada too.
I am, yeah. I'm actually just outside of Ottawa, our nation's capital, about 2 hours north of Syracuse, New York.
No, but Pascal is from I think Manitoba.
No way.
You think he's from Winnipeg?
That's actually where my MC9 came from, just outside of Enola.
He's local to me. He's down near Welland.
Oh, okay. Why did I think he was up? There's somebody from Winnipeg in our in the bus grease monkey forum.
Yeah.
Of Ottawa, our nation capital, about 2 hours north of.
Do that. What else we got out there?
Everybody says the audio is good.
Hey, Phil's with us. Hey, Phil, how are you?
Manton. Hello from Manton. Where's Manton?
Manton is about...
Pascal says he's in Niagara.
Oh, Niagara. Manton's about 25 minutes from me. That's Mylan. He's the guy who helped me bring my pre-war back from Holland.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, Pasquale.
Pascal says his bus came from Winnipeg too.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
he's got a Western flag.
Oh, this is awesome.
We're starting to pick up a few more viewers. Got 24, it looks like. 28. Well, do we want to get started with actually chatting?
Sure.
Well, why don't we start with you, John? Everybody knows our story.
Wow, we got Bruce from Sydney, Australia. That's cool.
That's like 12 hours. Awesome. Must be morning.
Yeah, it's probably early in the morning tomorrow. What's tomorrow like?
Let us know what's coming our way.
All right. Well, so Jason, why don't you tell us our host or our guest here?
Well, Sean's got himself a bus. He's got many more hours on the road than we do. Although we had our buses maybe a little bit longer, he's been driving coach professionally. So that's probably where his love for buses started. So.
Well, yeah, he certainly did. Welcome, Sean.
So, thanks. Yeah. Actually, the love for buses actually came from my childhood. Long before I actually got my commercial driver's license. Growing up, my parents were heavily into classic vehicles, car clubs, the car show circuit. So from a very young age, my summers were spent, going to cruise nights and planned events. So that really instilled the adoration for the older automobile, and not always having, the creature comforts and just having a more simplistic machine. So going through my professional career, I went through a few curveballs, and every single time I found myself finding stability and happiness on the highway, whether it be a truck or another commercial vehicle. I finally decided to get my passenger endorsement, get my speaking in U.S. terms for a lot of the viewers. I got my passenger endorsement, went on the highway as a motorcoach operator, and absolutely adored it, and set out the goal of having a bus. And didn't think I was going to do that until I was retired after a 30-year career. But COVID really changed things up, and one road trip with my father last summer kind of just made everything come together and culminated into the perfect storm to get this bus, get it home, and have the mix of my adoration of motor coaches and old vehicles and the hobby and preservation. So it all just came together in a perfect storm, but it was definitely over 20 years coming.
So about how many miles have you driven, you think?
I got my commercial license in 2013. I would average since 2013, I would be nearing a million, definitely over a million kilometers, just with the nature of a few of the contracts that I've done from the Texas border down to the Maritimes. I was able to pack in a lot of miles in a couple places here and there. But unfortunately, because working for multiple carriers and just how paperwork it was done, I didn't have the same accessibility as some of the old school truckers to keep all my logs the same way and track all my mileages, especially working locally with Ontario law, not always having to run a logbook. I don't have that precise number, which I wish I did. Going into the electronic logs these days, it's a lot easier to keep track of. And, eventually I'll be able to figure out when I've definitely crested the 1,000,000 mile mark, and it should be coming up in the next, 18 months, I hope, if things return.
So you drove in the States too, not just in Canada.
Correct. So what I did is, because I got my bus license so young, nobody wanted to send me across the border because everyone wants several years of safe driving experience. And let's face it, you have someone who's 23, 24 coming in wanting the keys to your $700,000 motor coach. They really want a top shelf driver. So I had picked one company that I really wanted to drive for. I actually went to school on their school buses as a kid, and forged a bit of a friendship with their management. And he gave me an impossible task. He said, we'll hire you when you've got overnight, multi-day experience, interstate experience, cross-border, international. Like, he just threw the gamut at me. And so I actually found a job where I was able to work for a bus distributor, picking up brand new IC buses in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and delivering them to the client. So it was a cash job that I was able to get done. And it gave me the interstate, overnight, multi-day, interprovincial, interstate, everything. So when I came back to them, I was like, the only thing in my way now is the age for the insurance. So they hired me, they put me on the smaller vehicles, and then on my 25th birthday, they sent me out on a 4-day trip with a highway coach.
Wow. All right. So Jason, you get a question, looks like. Oh. So here's the thing. I got into this hobby from Volkswagens, right? I have a bunch of Volkswagen microbuses, and Jason's story is more or less the same thing. He came into it by, being interested in restoring old vehicles and getting into it. You came into it through the bus world. And there's some of the older guys that on the Bus Grease Monkey Forum that Jason and I are part of, that are, we're down the road, over the road, long haul bus drivers. You're probably the first one I've really had a conversation with. What do you do over 4 days? Do you stay in hotels? How do you do it? It's out and back. What happens if it's a one-way trip for a group, or is it pretty much all charters where the bus eventually makes it back?
So I've had the opportunity to do two types of motor coach work, the entertainer side and the seated coach side. I was very fortunate to do private tours on seated coach. So rather than doing like Greyhound type work, I was doing private groups going on trips that they have elected to take as a luxury. So that was the majority of my work. And what would happen is basically you would set out and get the majority of your drive done to wherever you're going. A perfect example would be Ottawa and New York City. So you would load up 4 days of clothes, you'd prepare your bus, clean your bus, get your group. And basically from the time that you leave the bus yard to the time that you're at your destination that day, you're a concierge. So what you're doing is you're not only ensuring that they're getting a very smooth drive and you're planning everything 10 steps ahead and 10 kilometers ahead. You're the bellhop. You are getting their bags. You are adjusting the climate control. You're answering all their questions. You're facilitating their needs. So that's where the work really comes into play. The easiest part of that job is when you get where you're going, because outside of bringing up your seat backs and sweeping your floors, you're getting paid to be on vacation. That's what I really loved about it as a young person, was going on these multi-day trips. I was getting paid to go to places that I couldn't otherwise afford to go, being paid to stay at hotels that I couldn't otherwise afford to be at. And I would be on a trip for 4 days in New York City or Boston or Portland, Maine. And so in those 4 days that you're there with the group, you're letting their itinerary run the show, and you never want to say no unless it's going to cost the company astronomical money. For example, hey, we want to hop through the Lincoln Tunnel 6 times to go to a special restaurant. Well, we're going to talk about that. But outside of just making their every wish.
What kind of places did you typically go to?
So the most common was anywhere in the Northeast. So Quebec City, Montreal, Boston, New York City. Those were the main ones for our market up here. And it was basically a 4-day trip. And then on your 4th day, you just got to make sure that you're rested. The bus is clean. You've done your pre-trip, and then you're just driving home. It was definitely a blast. The work to play ratio, I would say, for me as a young person was about 50-50.
Wow. Okay, so that's pretty fun.
Cool.
What's the longest trip you took in terms of continuous days out?
5 days. I was offered an 8-day to Florida, but I couldn't get out of my day job. At that point, I was actually going into a different career path, and I wasn't able to take it. So my longest out was 5 days, and hopefully I'll have the opportunity to get back onto an entertainer coach to be out, 60 days when that returns.
Wow.
Dennis is asking, why do I have green grass in my background, but Sage's buses are freezing their nuts off?
Well, because my picture was taken last week, not 2 months ago.
We didn't coordinate our pictures. Sean's is basking in the sun. Mine's in the sun. Well, it's kind of overcast, and yours is in the Great White North.
Yeah, well, weather-wise, Scott and Tyler had a live earlier today, and it was freezing rain down in Tennessee. I was supposed to have some calls for business tomorrow with Tennessee customers. They're all canceled. This is what I don't get. If we're all at home working, how is it that you can't do a business call because it's freezing rain and you're at home versus the weather's totally normal and you're at home? I didn't ask, but I mean, the one's like, oh, well, we've got all this freezing rain coming, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the call tomorrow. I'm like, okay, but you are working out of your house, right? And I didn't. Anyway, I'm still trying to figure that out.
But not nuts. It was lug nuts.
Well, and it's like the joke: can you have a school snow day when you're learning from home? So if it snows 2 feet, do you have a snow day even though all the kids are home and the teachers are home? These are the philosophical questions that are going to come out of COVID.
Well, I've been working from home for over 10 years, so I'm pretty accustomed to that. So, I mean, if my internet goes down, I use my phone. Simple as that.
So, Sean, let's talk about this bus behind you here. So, first off, explain the model, because I mean, I have ridden a lot of those. I used to live in the Detroit area, and I used to ride with all the drug dealers back and forth from Grand Rapids to Detroit. I learned pretty quickly that was one of the more convenient ways to get drugs across the state of Michigan, at least. At that point, no, the cops hadn't really quite figured out that all you need to do is put a duffel bag in a Greyhound and But anyway, so I've been on those buses before. But talk a little bit about the bus I mean, did you decide you wanted a bus and then you went looking for it, or you found this bus and you decided you needed it?
Yeah, it was kind of the latter. So the bus is a 1982 Motorcoach Industries MC9 AA with a 6V92 Detroit and a 5-speed Fuller. As far as I know, it's the original drivetrain. I don't have any history on any rebuilds. It was built in North Dakota, Pembina, North Dakota, and it was used as a sales demo unit for MCI. And its first buyer was a bus line called Moose Mountain. It's a Canadian outfit. I believe they're in Saskatchewan. They've since rebranded and been sold off. From there, it went to Pegasus Tours and ran charters and tours out in the Rockies, based, I believe it was between Calgary and Edmonton. And pictures that I found of this bus in service are all up in the Banff National Park. It was retired in 2013 and found its way to a gentleman outside of Winnipeg who had it for a number of years. And funny enough, this bus was never actually a Greyhound, which is why it's a little bit of a unicorn.
Oh.
Most buses that I've actually seen of this vintage have been stripped apart and started into a home DIY conversion, where I would say more often than not, people get in over their head and then liquidate it. So you're buying a shell of a bus with missing windows, no lavatory, and a slew of wiring issues. This bus being owned by two private family-run companies and then being retired and cared for by a bus fanatic, it has been frozen in time. The seat backs are the original upholstery. At some point in its commercial life, the seat bottoms were replaced. Everything works, from the reading lamps to the chimes to the retrofitted TVs that were put in the early 90s. Wow. Everything is still complete and still there. The reason that it's really interesting to me is that it's got the livery of the Greyhound without a single day of commercial Greyhound line run abuse. So in December of 2019, this bus was in its first movie. It was actually produced and directed by Sean Penn in Winnipeg. Production on that movie is currently slowed down due to COVID, but after the production was done, they left the wrap on it. So we fast forward to the summer of 2020. I'm actually on a road trip with my father, a weekend trip during COVID, team driving because we weren't bursting our bubbles and we didn't want to stay at hotels and really risk COVID. We drove a weekend trip to North Battleford, Saskatchewan. During that summer, a company had reached out to me, Lincolns and Longhorns. They're a tour operator outside of Winnipeg. They reached out to me wanting to know if I was interested in driving their first post-COVID trip, which was going to have 8 passengers on a motor coach going west. We connected, we talked, I was going to do it, we were going to make it work, we were optimistic. It ultimately all fell through because COVID was not weaning like we thought it would. So he was like, you know what, swing by the farm anyway, I'd like to meet you, and, elbow bump. And we planned with my father to swing into the farm, and here he had this bus that he had told me about, and never in a million years thought that I would be looking at buying a bus, but on the spot, here it is, test drive it. And it was a bucket list item for me to drive something that old that you have to double clutch, that has no power assist really. And I fell in love with it. I hit the road in the bus as you see it sitting there behind me. And I got emotional. My father was with me, and it was just a flood of emotions from my childhood, the double clutching, the sound of the gears grabbing, the fact that it's a motor coach and my adoration of it and how emotional I got with the standstill of the industry. It was a complete package of every emotion, positive and negative, and I knew that it had to come home. So we started discussing things, and my father was with me the whole way, and being, tenured in his classic car life, he knew what would make a good deal, and he definitely guided me through that process and made sure that I was able to make it happen. So then we left with the half-ton truck. We left the bus in Winnipeg, did some paperwork, and in September I went back and drove it home.
That's cool.
And so you have an extensive video about going and getting it, and that, yes, of course, is that. I think I just stumbled onto you, and then I did. Jason, had you seen the video before I sent it to you?
No, when you sent it to me, that was the first I'd come across Sean's channel. I thought, this is cool. There's another bus nut, and he's not that far from me, so I connected.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, YouTube's got their logarithms, and of course, I've got buses, so I'm sure it's feeding me other bus video and stuff, but. So I'm like, wow, this is a bus rescue, essentially, which is what Jason and I both, have done bus rescues where we went and actually got a bus. Yours was a lot easier than ours, but it was a rescue nonetheless. I mean, you went and you snagged it and got it. And so did you have to deal with any problems on the way home, or did it just truck right along?
I took enough time off work that I was able to spend an entire day going over it with a fine-tooth comb. And in the video, you see that I went to my seller's bus graveyard and was able to get some parts for it. I was fully expecting a breakdown somewhere in Northern Ontario on Highway 11 where there's no help to be sought. So what I was able to do was actually post on a Facebook group of retro Canadian trucks and saying, if you see me on your travels, throw me a wave. If you see me broken down, I need help. And so many people reached out with support saying, hey, we love seeing a young guy trying to save the old iron. If you're between here and here, let me know. I have a wrecker, I have a flatbed, whatever. So I allotted time for a breakdown before I had to be back at my job. And being a trusty 6V92 and the fact that she had a good life, it was nothing more than just checking the fuel, filling the oil, checking the lug nuts, and hitting the road. I had no failures outside of 3 blown marker lamps that I fixed in North Bay.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was watching that. You had to just replace marker lamps. That's
I couldn't believe that was it. I was expecting seals or oils or something to give up.
Right.
There's like a 200-kilometer stretch going through the national park up there where there's literally nothing too. I've done that in the wintertime, pulling a trailer in a snowstorm. That's just white knuckle.
Yeah, so I was able to fill up in Nipigon. I was able to fill up on diesel, and I filled up in Thunder Bay because it was cheaper and it was only an hour and a half difference drive. And I was expecting driving that long and that hard that I would come into some sort of problem. and driving along with no cruise control. I'm on Highway 11. I'm about 2 hours into that stretch, and I look down, and the bus is just climbing right up to 120 kilometers an hour, and I'm flying, and it feels like you're going 80. And I had to back it off, and she just didn't want to quit. Like, it was an awesome experience. I had my best friend with me, and he was chilling out, took a nap in the back with the seats turned around, and it was just a great drive through Northern Ontario. And every single time I felt a bump or a creak or a crack, I was waiting for that letdown to pull over, but we got where we were going on time.
Cool. Just a couple of questions just before they scroll off my screen here. There's one that's asking about back when you were in Chicago, if you had any issues with low bridges.
Chicago is one city that I have not actually been able to drive motorcoach in. Boston is a nightmare, I can say that much.
You've been in New York City, though. I imagine that'd be interesting.
I love New York City. Every driver thinks I'm crazy for it. I will go to New York City 100 times. I love it.
Oh yeah, New York is awesome. They have a lot of buses, maybe not that exact model, but they're still running those buses back and forth from the Bronx down to Battery Park, basically at the very tip of Manhattan. I mean, you see, I mean, they must have thousands of them because you see one every couple minutes. I split my time between New York City and Traverse City. So nice. I'm there a bit.
Dan's asking it just to confirm, it's a 5-speed non-synchronized, so you're double clutching up, and it is a 5-speed gearbox. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I don't float when I'm driving I'm a part-time highway truck driver now. I float my gears in an 18-speed truck. In this bus, despite what every 30-year Greyhound driver is telling me, I am still double clutching it. It's a very tight gearbox, and I want to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a brand new bus.
Well, bus old man Phil will be proud of you because he gives everybody crap for floating gears.
It's funny, when it's not your gearbox, you're the first one to want to show me how to float it. But when I'm the one footing the bill, I'm not doing that.
So there's a couple folks on here who have joined us tonight. One is Phil, and then another is Stan. They are part of the Bus Boys, which is a bus museum down in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities. Yeah. And so I think, you've heard of them?
I have, yeah, and I've actually been speaking with my father, who's also getting into the bus ownership game, about getting down there with our buses when the borders open.
Yeah, they've done a couple bus rallies. They've hosted some rallies over the last 10, 15 years. And, Jason's bus came from them. He bought it from the Bus Boys.
That's awesome.
So we got to spend a week, was it? I think about a week there.
It was probably about 10 days total because we stopped in to check on it for a few days. Then we went and finished your rescue after your radiator was done, and then went back and actually got it. So I don't know, maybe Sean doesn't know the whole story about our 5 weeks on the road rescuing 2 buses.
I'm definitely going to get caught up on your videos, though, that's for sure.
Yeah. I have 2 buses. I've got a 1941 pre-war yellow coach. It's considered kind of the first interstate diesel. It's the first bus that, interstate bus that they actually put a diesel engine in. They actually got it from the agriculture industry in Iowa and put it in the bus, and it then became the Detroit diesel.
Nice.
And so that bus has got a lot of history, and it's, it's just a neat bus. It's the same model as what you see behind Jason. If you look behind me, you can see 2 buses. You see the one with the rust on the roof, and then there's another bus you can kind of see behind it. That's the pre-war. And the other one, which looks a lot like Jason's, came out of Texas. And Tyler, who's a bus mechanic, Bus Grease Monkey, his son, he and I went down there last January of 2020 to bring it back. I bought it in December 2020. We needed a new air compressor. I mean, we were rocketing through what we thought were just a couple punch list items because it looked like it was in really good shape. Mm-hmm. And then COVID hit, and then he got busy in the summer because he's a mobile mechanic. So that's when Jason and I in August decided in I guess July we decided we were going to do it, but in August we went down there and we ran into all kinds of learn as you go.
Interesting stories that I'll never forget, man. That was some good times and some real trying times too. That's for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so we ended up getting my bus home and then went and got his. So we took a 5 week period of time to go do that, and that was something I'm probably not going to do again.
Yeah.
But
Tommy's asking Sean what his plans are for the bus, to keep it or convert it, and I think I know the answer, but I'll let him answer.
So for this bus, the Greyhound, it is to be kept absolutely period correct as a seated motor coach. There's a lot of other better contenders to convert that have already been stripped out, cannibalized, and wrecked. This is an absolute unicorn, and I promised my seller that I would stay true to its nature, stay true to its history, and I've actually had a great welcoming with that direction from the bus community, where I've actually been able to get a period correct MCI part numbered table for the rear where the seats turn around. I've been able to get a lot of NOS parts. I just got a message yesterday from a bus company that's closing their doors. They've got a pile of parts for me to go pick up for free just to keep this thing preserved. Wow. So the only components that I would consider updating on it would be safety features. My air dryer, the bolt-on replacement from MCI is about $2,300. I can get a much newer, better Bendix part number for about $400. So maybe a few things behind the skin that don't affect its look or aesthetic I would update, but definitely no seats are coming out. Nothing's being done. TVs aren't being updated. I want to keep her as period correct because the emotional reaction of people when they step on and get to relive their childhood or good memories from the 80s and 90s, it's worth its weight in gold, and it's also a hell of a lot less work.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, just keeping it the way that it is now. Does it have power steering or not? It
does have power steering.
Okay.
That is one thing that I was very grateful for. That's just about the only thing power on it. Air brakes, air ride, it feels great, but when you get under the skin, outside of a few airlines, it's mechanical linkages. Your clutch and your shifter and everything, it's 40 feet of linkages.
Well, the good thing is that they're serviceable,
Very.
Yeah.
And for a guy like me who isn't operating a commercial company to fund this thing like most bus companies, I need something that's cheap and serviceable that I can do myself. If I had, a 2003 Prevost that you need a laptop to talk to, I would never be in this ownership game.
So now there was a suggestion about maybe you're now looking at another bus, or did I not understand that correctly?
His dad's bought a bus, and
question
what he bought.
So it's a father-son little effort here. I'd say the collective we have acquired, the royal we have acquired a 1955 Pacific Greyhound that was a seated coach in Southern California, and then a church bus in the southern states, and then in the early 90s converted to a private motorhome in Ohio. It's never seen salt, never winter driven. It's a project, and it's currently sitting at my friend's company in Illinois waiting for the borders to open for us to get it home. Uh-huh. So just by the nature of there being one of me and one of him and one bus and then another bus, it kind of is just going to split into, I'll drive my first one and he'll take the second one. We'll just have some fun father-son time with it, But I haven't told the fiance.
I think you sent me a picture of it. I'm trying to see if I can find that to pull
it
up.
I can send you another one, but the fiance is going to see another ownership come across the table with my name on it.
Yeah, well, when the border opens, that's the big thing. I don't think you can fly from Canada to the U.S. anymore. They closed that loophole.
My understanding is you still can. However, when you return to the country, you have to quarantine, and there's different regions are in different states of lockdown and preventive measures. Yeah. So with my day job, it's just not worth trying to go and get it back. I can't take 2 weeks off work.
And that's Jason. He had to do that. He got home and he had to sit in quarantine for.
Yeah, but I had a bus to play with in the driveway, so that was kind of fun. Sit at home and play with a bus.
As a truck driver and at my other civil job, I can't work remotely, so I just don't. I can't work from home.
One of the other questions that was asked is if there's any bus rallies in Southern Ontario, and I mentioned it in my last video that if people in Southern Ontario are interested, please get in contact with me because I'm trying to gauge interest right now. Depending on how COVID and rules and everything go this summer, maybe late this summer, I'll try to plan a small rally or a get together of some kind. I think that'd be great to get some of these buses locally together for some pictures and meet some people.
Absolutely. I would definitely come down. I have a tank full of winter fuel that I want to change out. And hopefully by then we have the 1955 up here. It's running and driving and stopping under its own power. And also one of our viewers tonight is from Kitchener, and he owns 5 conversion buses. And he's actually my boss in the entertainer world at Gypsy Wind Custom Coach. I'm very fortunate enough to work for the only Canadian fully compliant, commercially insured entertainer coach company. And his buses are 7-figure, custom built, 45-foot mega mansions. And he's definitely voiced wanting to get his drivers out to come to whatever rally we kind of put on with our old rusty iron. So we'll have a very eclectic bunch in Southern Ontario when this happens.
Well, and you did a video. You went down and visited and stayed overnight on one of those buses, I think, and that was pretty
did.
neat.
That was also with my best friend again, my friend Chris that came with me to Winnipeg to get the Greyhound. I'm slowly converting my friend circle to bus people.
Yeah, I haven't talked anybody into buying a bus around me yet. I think that's it's like a boat here. They all enjoy the fact that I own it, but nobody else is going to bite on it. So
yeah.
Good on you if you talk other people into it, because that'll be good. Well, so this bus was built, it's an MCI, it was built in Winnipeg, is that correct?
No, the MC9, the precursor to the D model, was in their Pembina facility, so just south of Winnipeg.
Okay.
But in the States, on the state side. So currently to this day, if you're in the Winnipeg area, you'll see them on transports, like various states of construction, leaving Winnipeg, going south for completion, and then coming back up as a completed bus.
Okay, so
there's a message on here from Phil. Phil's happy. He says, "What? No tack in your face, no air horns on the roof, and no huge running lights, no straight pipes, no cute decals, no holes, aftermarket grills."
Bless you, son. Yeah, let me tell you, I want one of those nice leather lazy boys as a driver's seat, and like maybe 6 trumpets on the roof.
Oh, you need the recliner, like the lazy man.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Custom paint the dash and wrap it in leather and make it look like, my grandma's kitchen or something.
Yeah, you need some bullhorns on the top.
Oh, that puffy 70s leather with the little circles in the middle everywhere to hold it in place, so it's all puffed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is let's kind of recap here. We're talking with Shamrock Sean on YouTube. Is it Shamrock Sean, correct?
It is. Yeah, that's my nickname. That has then turned into a business venture, which has just kind of taken over my life. It's Shamrock everything.
Yeah. So he is. Sean has purchased this vintage bus that was wrapped in Greyhound wrapping, but was never really a Greyhound. It was always a private charter company's bus, and has gotten into busing. But he's actually probably driven, well, let's say near 1 million miles, or over 1 million kilometers in your career already. So we are talking a little bit about kind of the adventure he had to get it, and go from there. So do you like, it's probably pretty cold in Ontario right now. What's the weather like in Ottawa?
So we are nearing lows of -40 Celsius, nearing where Fahrenheit and Celsius equal. And I am the silly goof that is going out tomorrow at 8 a.m. to start my bus in the freezing cold and get it out of storage for the first time in 3 months. So
what are you going to do to, I mean, you're going to not do good things to, I mean, it does not really want to start in that type of temperature.
So I have the D8 batteries removed on the tender. And then what I'm doing before I even turn one crank of the starter, it's actually being stored at one of my part-time jobs. So what I'll be doing is putting a huge diesel-powered heater behind the motor, almost like a stable heater. And then I'm also considering, it's not the most approved method, but some charcoals in like a turkey pan under the motor and just have them glow and radiate some heat, and try to get some heat going directly at the motor and run an extension cord to the block heater. I'm figuring if I can get a few hours of some sheltered heat before I even try to roll it over, I should be all right. I've then also acquired a 50-foot airline with an auxiliary port to fill my air system if I have any freezing in any airlines, and I'm able to use a highway truck with my trailer supply valve off the truck, almost like a heavy wrecker would do to release the brakes. So I'm going to make sure that I do everything as preventatively and as healthily as possible for it. I sparked a lot of debate with a rather harsh cold start video that I put on to try and spark the algorithm on YouTube, and A lot of people think that I don't know how to start any motor for that matter, but tomorrow I'll be very gentle.
I think as long as you're patient and like if you've got like a torpedo heater pointing at it and you wait long enough to get some heat into that block, you should be fine.
Absolutely.
You haven't got an electric block heater or anything on yours? Mine has a block heater and man, it's amazing. 2 hours and it's lukewarm at -5.
Mine does have a block heater. I have not had a chance to get under it and inspect the wiring, so I'm going to be using a TSC brand magnetic one, which I know will then be safe because the last thing I need to do is plug it in, walk away, and look back and have a 40-foot flame.
Yeah.
Well, let me see here. I'm kind of going through questions as well.
So motor barbecue. I love that.
That's a good one.
Oh boy. So Stan, I don't know if you saw, but Stan from the Busboys, gave you a really nice compliment. And
I'm just reading that now. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to see that. And
put the link up to for Sean's channel for everybody to get to there too.
And I will be having more content come out. I will be recording tomorrow, and then actually the reason I'm pulling it out of storage before the snow is gone is I've actually had a call for it to be in another movie with the Greyhound wrap. So I'm getting ready for that. So I'll have a lot of really cool footage hopefully in the next couple of weeks for some new uploads.
Well, that's cool. So you're still on the movie producers radar?
I am. Yeah. So I've really had to diversify through COVID, and at this point to offset the real estate that it takes up in the driveway and how obnoxious I am talking about buses every day, my fiance would love to see it go to work a few days to just offset the cost of, $900 tires and $500 fill-ups.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're how far from Toronto?
About 4 hours driving normally. And actually, I was able to do a small interview last week with Brent Deneur from the Vintage Motorcoach magazine. And he's interested in it too and trying to get it into some movie circles down in the Toronto area. He has a few picture cars himself. So I'm hoping if I can get a few films a year to just help offset the cost, I'll have a great, healthy hobby.
I don't think you're going to have much trouble
talked
with
to
that.
Brent last week. I think his magazine was supposed to go to print this week, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. I'm really excited to see what all goes into it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so Jason, besides talking with Sean, what's been going on in bus world in your life? We haven't been on in like a month, I think. It's been really slow this winter.
Pretty quiet down my way. I haven't been really doing a lot. I've been tinkering a little bit with windows, got a few more windows apart. That's really the next big thing I've got to do is I got to get all my windows done so I can pull it out of storage. I found a local glass shop. I found 2 glass shops actually that were willing to cut glass for me. And the one glass shop's able to redo the double paned ones for me, and they're going to do it as a thermal sealed unit. So rather than using the old aluminum, because I found a lot of my aluminum frames are in really, really poor shape, they can put a phenolic spacer in there that's more thermal resistant and actually seal them, make them a sealed unit. So I'm debating whether I want to go that route or just the old single panes and put the original spacers back in. So I haven't decided which way I'm going to go, but I'll get on that in the next years probably and get them ordered.
I've been trying to work on my Volkswagen stuff, and it's, man, even though it gets up to 12 degrees, which would that be in your temps, like
12 Fahrenheit?
Negative 20?
Yeah.
Negative 10, negative 20, negative 15, somewhere in there. But anyway, even though it's 12 degrees, it gets down at 6 at night, and so my shop is usually colder than it is outside temperature, and I just don't work in those conditions, so I'm just waiting for it to warm up right now. I did a live a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that we're catting out my bus to start doing the so Sean, both of my buses had already been converted to coaches or to motorhomes, and so I'm sticking with that. I mean, you can't go find 1940s seats and things like that. I have a few that I got from Jason, but beyond that, so we're putting it on a CAD, and we're going to do the layout and design and stuff like that. So we've got a basic CAD kind of laid out right now. So we're putting systems into it. He was supposed to come up a couple of weeks ago to shoot it with. He's got like a laser measure. He's got this device that's actually really cool. It'll actually just scan 3D and load it into the CAD. But we had a really bad snowstorm, and he didn't want to come up in the snowstorm, so we both agreed he's coming in March. But in the meantime, we just took a box, and we started a rectangle box, and we started putting the systems in. He said, once we do the 3D CAD, I can just bring it down into shape, but at least we can be working on, on some of this. So that's kind of what I've been working on. For the most part, that's about it. Almost done with rebuild on my website, silversidesage.com, which I've had around for 15 years. I just decided it's time for a facelift. So that's awesome. I don't know. That's about all I've been doing. Jason, what have you been?
I've got some website news. I managed to get the buswithus.ca domain. It came up for renewal, and I was able to snag it.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to build a website shortly. I just haven't had time. My new job's been keeping me pretty occupied.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be getting into that conversion group with you guys soon, because that 1955, similar to your bus, is already being converted and wanting to be updated. This was a DIY job in the 90s, so I'll definitely be bouncing some stuff off you and picking your brains for ideas, because I'll be doing some updates on a 1955 with a 1994 conversion that's been sitting 25 years.
It's still the original drivetrain in it, though, is it not?
It is I believe it's an 871, and it drove to my friend's yard under its own power over 700 miles.
So what kind of bus is that?
It's a 1955, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, GM TDM 4515 or 4505. It was an intercity coach, so it doesn't have the midship door like a transit bus, and it does not have standee windows. It just has larger windows, and it's a 35-foot coach, and it spent its life as I actually have a picture of it in service. I can send you guys after, and it was a Pacific Greyhound bus in California. Wow. But it's now a motorhome painted white with red from a church group, and it's kind of an oddity.
Yeah, Jason, yours was a church bus at one point, wasn't it?
I think so. There, I just pulled up a picture of that model for the viewers on the channel. So it's got the bigger windows that go all the way up.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I believe it would have had like overhead parcel racks that the transit buses would not have had, and just little variants like that.
Yeah. We don't totally know the history of my bus. I think it was a church bus at one point. I've asked Dan to check with his brother if they can dig up any information on it, but so far I have not been able to find any history whatsoever on my bus other than the original Greyhound delivery information, which it went to Northland Greyhound in Twin Cities, and from there, don't know when they sold it off, don't know anything beyond that.
Other than it had was it the Chiefs? No, what did it say on the side? We found in the shadows.
Oh, it's Tigers. It said
Tigers.
A logo of Tigers. So I think that was some kind of a sports team that might have had it at one point. And they must have a while, because the decals, there was two different versions of the decals on it.
I don't mean to interject here too rudely, but one comment came clarifying my fumble on the model number, a TDM 4515, and my father actually just texted me a photo of that bus in service. But I just wanted to talk on that comment real quick. Not sure how well it will not pop up for you guys. I'll be sure to post it after. Michael Gilkin, who commented, not sure if you guys are familiar with Mike.
Nope.
Okay, so Michael Gilkin, he splits his time between New York City and Florida. I was down in Florida at Winter Garden doing a little project with ABC companies for driver recruiting, and he rented a car and drove hours north to come sit with me, and we sat at the like a Second Cup or a Starbucks for a few hours and had lunch. And I have never met someone with the wealth of knowledge and experience that he has. He was a commercial driver for years. I think he started when he was like 18. So I just wanted to give him a little bit of credit, because he has educated me so much and has allowed me to get into this ownership game with a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for clarifying that it's not a 4505, it is a 4515.
Yeah, I don't know the transit bus numbers that well. I've spent more time researching Silversides and 4104s and 4106s.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically they call the fish bowls like the new look buses, the new look GM buses, and that's an old look. And those are really cool. They had one of those in a Volkswagen ad where they painted the new look GM bus to look just like a Volkswagen bus, and they put them next to each other, and they're dead ringers for each other. So I've always liked that design just from that ad a long time ago.
So this here is the bus that we have sitting in Illinois. We found a picture of it. Actually, Michael Gilkin helped with finding this bus in the archives. That is the bus that has since been converted and that we're trying to import to Canada.
So, the green one, that one that...
Yeah, this one right here. This is it as a Greyhound. So that bus is being saved and brought north to be a camper. Now, it's funny, you were talking about GM old look and GM new look. I have a lot of memories as a kid with silver-sided buses being in the 90s and the 2000s going to school. My father rode on the GM old look, and so part of the reason that he's kind of taking leadership of this other bus is he rode to school on GM old looks. But if you look at the shape of the back windows, they almost look like frowning eyes. So he called it a sad bus, and I always grew up hearing about sad buses. And so the GM new look, I aptly referred to as happy buses. And as a kid, I didn't know how funny that was. But to this day, we still joke about the sad buses and happy buses. And so my dad got his sad bus, and we're trying to bring it up north here.
So I remember riding the new looks when I was a kid, riding the city buses, because the city I lived in was Guelph at the time, and they were all new looks. And man, many fond memories as a kid hopping on the bus. It was like, I don't know, it was like 50 cents or something, 35 cents to go across town and hang out for the day.
So yeah, it's amazing how many memories people have on these vehicles. My mother saw my bus for the first time in the fall, and she got on and she was gobsmacked because she flashed back to being on an MC9 Greyhound going to New York City every other week for piano lessons as a kid. And she took a few minutes to slowly walk the aisle, feel the textures, go to the bathroom, play with the lights. And it was a complete sensory overload for her. So it's amazing how many people have happy memories on these buses from their childhood. So it's awesome to try to preserve it.
Yeah. Cool.
That recovering that bus out of Illinois is going to be probably closer to the type of recovery that Jason and I mean, do you know what kind of condition it's in? Is it in great shape, or is it?
Yeah, so the seller was able to send us in-depth videos with cold starts, tours of the bus, how to operate certain aspects of it, and then where it's staying. They've been taking it out for regular trips for us. So things that we know it's going to need is a generator to run the rooftop AC. It does not have any coach heat right now. That was removed for another repair. It has everything it needs to drive under its own power across the border. It starts, stops, tires hold air. It had its state inspection. It legally drove itself 700 miles. So the task of getting it home, we are in a similar position as my MC9, added a border. As far as it being like use ready, we have a lot to do to the actual living accommodations, fridge, shower, plumbing, but the skeletons of the bus are in great shape.
Cool. I can, if you need any help for information to get it across the border, I can probably walk you in the right directions. And it's actually a video Sage talked to me about the other day, suggested doing a video about importing buses across the border.
That would be great, because at any other time, I would have already gone down, picked it up, brought it back. I've imported vehicles before. I imported my first vehicle when I was 17. It was a very straightforward process, but with COVID and essential travel and it not being able to be put on just any old trailer to hire someone, we're looking at exorbitant costs. One quote to get it trucked just across the border at Sarnia was going to be as much as the whole bus cost. So any advice you guys can offer to get that bus from Illinois into Canada would be great.
Just drive it. That's,
Yeah. Even if you can get somebody to drive it to Port Huron, I mean, there's a couple trucking services that can. This is actually a good wrecker company I know that's Sarnia area that they could go across and pick it up and bring it across.
I would love to do that. I just can't cross the border myself and my father as well. He's in a very similar career as me, and we just can't take the time off work.
So that might be an option if you can get somebody to drive it to.
Yeah, if Dan is still on, maybe I'll talk Dan into doing it, because borders aren't going to open for quite a while.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And Dan's out in Florida right now, but maybe when he comes back in the spring, he and we'll get it over to Port Huron for you.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
And then there you go. See now, Jason, it's turning into another rescue. Then you can get your buddy. You can get your buddy to. The problem here, though, is Sean, that he and I both know the first 300 miles are the worst.
Mhm.
If you make it 300 miles, you're in probably good shape to make it anywhere.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I don't know, Jason. Do you watch Musty One?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah. So he just went and picked up a Vanagon, an '88 Westphalia from his parents in Florida, and he broke down in 150 miles. I was dying. I'm like, yep, first 300 miles. If you get past the first 300, then you're probably going to make it home. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, there was a few days there where what did I joke when we were in Texas? We're counting our distance in feet now, not miles.
Yeah, feet per day. Yeah, well, once we got, all of those things replaced, then I just...
Growing up the way that I did...
Now.
Sorry, go ahead. There was a lag there.
Oh, no, you were saying, Sean?
Yeah, growing up the way that I did with my father, with very temperamental pre-war cars, I know that the worst thing for any vehicle is for it to sit. So I've been very blessed to have my friend who is a commercial bus operator and owner. They own a fleet of late model motor coaches. They've been taking this 1955 out on the road, driving it, stopping it, moving it, just to keep everything in operating form, because the last thing that we need to do is have it sit for 6 months and then go and try to drive it back to Canada. So it's been similar to my bus. It's been kept alive. And, I would have full faith in driving it all the way back to Ottawa. Even if we can just get it to the border, then I could make a trip with the MC9 and my father and some spare parts and tools and have a little bus convoy on the way home. But
so you got buddies in Chicagoland?
No, actually, they're south of that. I can't pronounce it. Musqueak, I don't know. If they're watching, I'm sorry. It's Timmy's Tours. They're in a small town in Illinois, a few hours south of Chicago, and they operate brand new MCIs, Sprinter van, SUVs, all charter type work. And they've been gracious enough to house this bus for me. So huge props to Jack Kaufman, Timmy Kaufman, and Timmy's Tours for keeping that thing alive for me, because with COVID, it would be dead in the water.
Well, Dan just said he's in. He should be home by the 1st of April. And
Love it.
Trust me, I've got a flexible schedule, and I am bored out of my mind. I mean, it's so for him, because he only lives down the road a little bit. I'll be through all my vaccinations by the end of this month.
Awesome.
And so I'm feeling comfortable that we could probably safely do it. It's just a matter of, oh man. I'll help if you need the help. And
I appreciate that, because there's no code sheet, so April works great.
All right. Well, now I just got myself.
Alan says, please talk me into buying a bus. My wife would be more difficult to convince, though.
Well, so Alan, this is how it worked in my house, right? I told her I was thinking about getting one of these. I started looking at these in 2005, and I finally pulled the trigger September of 19 is when I bought it from another bus guy. And my wife had always said, well, if you buy a bus, I'm moving to New York. And so she moved to New York. We go back and forth, but she got out of it what she wanted. I got out of it what I wanted in terms of getting a vintage bus. So I think you're probably going to have to negotiate, Alan. You're going to have to find out what she's looking for, and then you start horse trading, and the next thing you know, you'll get a green light to get your bus. I find that's how it worked here. I don't know, how did it work for you, Jason?
For me,
she likes it.
Yeah.
Though.
She wants to be able to travel and do some long haul trips, and we've done a lot of traveling in our Westphalias over the years, and to do longer trips and to be able to do some work from the road, it would be advantageous to have a bigger vehicle. So the little Volkswagen Westphalia, I mean, they're great for a couple week trips, but if you want to do a 3-month trip, they're a little confined, to say the least. So that was the whole idea was we started looking at something bigger. We didn't like the motorhomes. We didn't like the newer buses. So we started looking at vintage buses. And then from there, I just started researching all the different models. And we really settled on the silver side because we liked the style of it. And once we decided that was the bus we wanted, there was no turning back.
Michael Gilkin is saving me again. Moequa, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there isn't much north of Chicago, so.
Yeah. Someone else says, Sean, make it all about her. Well, I'm very fortunate that my fiance is the world's most patient person. And as a shift worker, I am home at very inopportune times. So anything to get me out of the house is a blessing. So, and the bus is always happy to see me. So it's not going to let me down in any other way than I can expect. And it's not ever going to walk away on me. So buses are
Might
just
leave you somewhere, though.
What's that?
Might leave you stranded somewhere, though.
But at least you still have it. It's not going to leave you alone. Your dog can run away. Your bus can't.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on an hour here, so maybe a quick recap, and we'll save some for the next one.
All right. Well, so we do this every so often. Jason and I get together. Try to do it every week unless we run out of things to talk about in winter because we haven't really done much. But this is Sunday Night Live, and tonight we've had Shamrock Sean. You can find him on YouTube, talking about his new venture into purchasing that beautiful MCI behind him with the Greyhound wrap on it. And so we've been talking about that. Sean, thanks for joining us. I am betting we will probably run into you face-to-face at some point in the future, and that'll be great.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Sorry to talk everybody's ears off. I just love my bus.
Well, no, that's what this is.
It was great having you. I appreciate you getting you on the channel and giving us something to talk about tonight. So it was a lot of fun.
No, it's been great, and I can't wait to meet you guys face to face and get all the buses together and kind of go through all the phases from the 40s to the 80s to the brand new conversions in Kitchener. It's going to be a great. I think it's going to be a great 2021.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We'll leave it with optimism. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. And Jason, nice talking with you. And I didn't tell you, my coils arrive tomorrow. So I'm going to get my Audi all put together tomorrow.
There you go. Go get it chipped.
There you go. All right. Well, guys, have a great night, and we'll talk to everybody at one point in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight.